Welcome back to the Road to an Effective Classroom Environment, where we bridge leadership, culture, and impact, both inside and beyond the classroom. I am your host, Dr. LaShanta, also known as that classy, sassy consultant. I'm an educator, a leader, and a consultant. And today's conversation is one that every leader, educator, and organization needs to hear. We are diving deep into what equity really means and, more importantly, what it requires. Today, I am joined by the phenomenal Celeste Warren, a visionary leader with nearly 3 decades of experience at a global Fortune 100 company, where she served as Vice President and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. She didn't just talk about inclusion, she built systems that made it real. Now, as the founder of Celeste Warren Consulting LLC and co founder of Destination STEM Incorporated, she continues to challenge organizations and communities to move beyond surface level efforts and create lasting, meaningful change. She's also the author of The Truth About Equity, what it really is, what it isn't, and why everyone wins when we get it right, where she breaks down the misconceptions around equity and reframes it as a shared advantage, not a divisive concept. In this episode, we're not just talking about diversity, we're not just talking about inclusion, we're talking about systems, we're talking about leadership, and we're talking about what it truly takes to create environments where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. So, if you've ever wondered why some initiatives fail and why culture feels misaligned, or what it really takes to lead with impact in today's world, this conversation is for you. So let's get started. Welcome, Celeste. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for the invitation.
I have been looking forward to this. We talked a few months ago, and I've been looking forward to our conversation. And there are actually some people out there on LinkedIn that have also commented and said that this is going to be great. So I am looking forward to it. So we're going to jump right on into this. And so for those who don't know Celeste Warren and they're just meeting you for the first time, tell me, who is Celeste beyond the titles and beyond the accolades? How would you describe yourself?
Well, I would say that first, I'm a woman of faith. I'm a mother and a wife, sister, auntie. Um, uh, I'm a truth seeker, part activist, and someone who truly wants to see an inclusive society.
I love it. Great way to start off the show in describing yourself. So tell me, what inspired your passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion work?
Well, it started when I was a child. My father, I grew up in a small steel mill town in Western Pennsylvania, and my father was the first Black teacher and Black principal in that area, that region.
Wow.
And so every day he would come home. I was one of five siblings, and he would come home and we'd be at the dinner table. And my mom would ask, "Hey, honey, how was your day?" And he would then proceed to tell us the challenges that he faced, the issues that he had, the obstacles that he had to overcome. And he didn't just complain. That wasn't who he was. He talked about what they were realistically, but then he talked about what he did to overcome them. And so every day I had a front row seat to watching this man just really progress in a system that really wasn't built for him at that time. And so for me, that's how it got started. It just stayed with me throughout childhood, throughout young adulthood and adulthood.
So those years of seeing your father um, going through those challenges, but also being someone who's in some pivotal positions as being the first Black American in those positions in your town, that speaks volumes. And so seeing that as a young girl, that has helped to shape your career as well as, I would say, your well-being and what you do and who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So many organizations, they say that they value inclusion, but employees often experience something different. Why does that gap exist?
Yeah, I think the main reason why it exists is the organization and the leaders in the organization might have one viewpoint of how they see inclusion, and
Mhm.
then the employees who we really should be looking at it through their lens, how they view inclusion, how they feel. And so the gap is such where the leaders say, "Oh, well, I think, everything's good, everything's fine." And then the employees are saying, "No, it isn't." And so there needs to be this sort of meeting of the minds, and leaders, instead of doing a lot of talking, listening to their employees, listening about what's going well, listening about what needs to be fixed, and listening to their ideas on how to fix it.
Mhm.
I think more of that needs to happen. And some companies do it through, they take culture surveys and different things like that, where you can get the written, information, the quantitative information, scores, and all of that. And that's a great first step. But you get the information, and then what you need to do is look at it. Leaders need to look at it and say, okay, well, where are the pain points in my organization, in my part of the company, or university or school? And then, like, talk to people, actually talk to them, and ask them, okay, we seem to have a gap here. Tell me what needs to happen, tell me what we need to be doing. And that conversation and that dialogue needs to happen more frequently.
Do you feel like the dialogues don't often happen because as leaders, we are sometimes fearful about what we're going to hear?
Yes. There's that. And then there's also, because nobody likes to be told they're not good at something, right?
Right.
So there's that aspect of it. And then I think also, it goes against their paradigm. So
Mhm.
they have a vision of the type of leader that they are, especially if they've been one for a long time. And so someone coming in and saying, "Well, no, you need to fix some things." It's hard for them to sort of observe that. And then the other piece I just think is, when they get the feedback, they're afraid to even get it and ask for it because they don't know if they'll be able to make the changes.
Mhm.
And I've talked to leaders so much where they say, "Well, I don't even know if we're going to be able to do anything." Well, what do you mean you don't know if you're going to be able to do anything? If we get the information, when we get the information, we want it so we can make changes. So
Right.
it's so interesting to me, that sort of the thinking of some leaders who are just fearful of getting the feedback, and then fearful of the fact that maybe I won't be able to make the changes.
So when you're talking to leaders who say that, oh, I don't think we're going to make be able to make these changes, is it because of, do they share that it's because of finances, or is it because of lack of being able to get people on board to change? Because we know that, change is hard. Many times change can be hard for people. So what do some of these leaders share as to why they feel like the change can't happen?
Well, I think one of the things is, um, and I talk about this a little bit. Some people think that equitable and fair practices take time. So if it takes, 10 steps to do something, get a product out or a service, then if we stop and try to do it in a fair and equitable and inclusive way, then it's going to take, instead of 10 steps, it's going to take 20 steps. And what people don't understand is that equity doesn't cause friction. It actually puts the things in place that allow that resistance to go away. And so, that's one of the reasons they think it's just going to take too much time.
Hmm.
So another example is when recruiters are recruiting and the hiring manager says, "I need the job filled quickly. I need it filled quickly." And so recruiters, they go on the path most traveled, the easiest thing. Well, let me just put an ad in the paper or put an ad in this place or that place, and then just wait for them to come in. But in order to get good qualified candidates of all different identities, you got to do the work, and you got to continue to do it, not just when the jobs are open, but you got to cultivate those relationships with those external organizations and associations and the labor market, so you can always have the candidates across all different identities available when a job opens.
So when you're explaining to organizations that invite you in and you're working with them, what do you say as far as why equity is important in the workplace? Share with our listeners, what do you tell them?
Well, I start to tell them that it's not an enigma wrapped in a question mark. And a lot of people don't truly understand the essence of equity. So
Mhm.
if I use it in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion, diversity is simply differences in people, those you can see and those you can't see. And so all those people have different skills, capabilities, identities, cultural backgrounds, life experiences. So all of those differences in people, and then inclusion, you're trying to surround them with a culture of inclusion so you can so they can have a sense of belonging and you can get them to a collective purpose. And the collective purpose would be the mission or vision of the school or the university or the organization or the nonprofit. And equity comes in because recognizing that all of these people are different in a lot of different ways. How do we meet them where they are and put those acts of equity in place to get them to that collective purpose? And for each of them, it looks something different. And that's where the acts of equity come in place, where you meet people where they are because they started from different starting points and then move them forward to get them to that collective purpose. And so it's basically leadership 101, management 101. And then when I put it in a business context, it's the same thing about a marketing strategy. In order for you to write a marketing strategy, you have to understand the customer base. And so you have to understand why certain identities of customers aren't really benefiting from your product or your service that you provide. So you have to do analysis. You do customer analysis. You look at and you segment the customer base. And so everyone who's in commercialization or sales or marketing, they know that. And so from that perspective, it's business 101. And so I help them to see it from a very pragmatic way to help them understand that it's not this enigma, it's things that you have to do. It's leadership 101, management 101, and business 101.
Definitely a great way to put that. So you have broken down um for our listeners exactly what diversity, inclusion, and equity look like in the workplace or in general. So let's go on to our next question for you. How can leaders create accountability around equity without creating fear or resistance?
Yeah, so I would say that how the best way to do it is not just to hire diverse across all identities. That's one way to do it. That's not the only way because you won't succeed if that's the only thing that you're doing. And a lot of people think that, well, if I hire so many of this or so many of that, I'm done. I have my, I'm I'm done. I don't have to do anything else. And that's just a piece of it. You have to really look at the systems, the policies, the practices, the procedures that exist within the organization and integrate it from that perspective. So I talked about the marketing strategies and embedding inclusive strategies in our marketing strategies. Also, from a people standpoint, from the cradle to the grave, from the talent acquisition and recruiting through development, through assessment of performance, through succession planning, and then even through retirement or through transition of the employee. You have to look at all of those different policies and practices and talent management strategies that you put in place and do it through a lens, create them and implement them through a lens of diversity and inclusion. When you do that, you're helping to drive accountability, because then if the manager or the leader is doing it appropriately, then you'll see the results of it. And those results could be from the standpoint of not just do we have a diverse workforce that mirrors the diversity in the area around us, but also, looking at how the talent and the people flow through the organization. Are we, what do we look like through the organization, and what do we look like at the top?
Mhm.
And really making sure that managers and leaders are looking at that. And then from a business standpoint, looking at the customer base and saying, how well are we doing in our sales and our revenue? And then segmenting out the revenue and the sales and saying, where is it going through? Who are we not reaching? Where do we need to make sure that we're penetrating? What markets? So, a lot of times it's the dissecting of what we're doing and how we're measuring and how we're holding people accountable, and that will help us to drive an equitable and fair, policies and practices and accountability.
So, how can leaders identify barriers within workplace culture and policies?
Uh, well, one of the ways that you can do it is, um, you look at the policy, and if it is, and ask the question, who's being left behind?
Mhm.
Is this policy, this practice, this procedure, this strategy, this initiative, is it leaving anyone behind? Is it forgetting about groups of people? Is it actually hindering and putting obstacles in the way of certain groups of people, and why? So that's the best way to be able to really look at it and do that. So, look, as we said, in the people processes, looking, for example, at your performance management and looking at the outcomes of that and looking at the distribution curve and saying, okay, the bulk of the people that are getting maybe the higher expectations or higher ratings, do they represent the sort of the makeup of the overall population of the organization? And if it doesn't, you need to be asking the question why. So there's a lot of analytics that can be done to really help to understand, are we leaving anyone behind? And those are the questions that we need to ask. And then also too, at the inception standpoint, at the strategy development standpoint, when you're sitting around the table and you're thinking about these various different initiatives and planning them, look around the table and say, who's not here? Whose ideas are we missing? Who have relevant things to contribute? So asking that question at the beginning of when you're creating something, and then when you have the outcomes and looking back and saying, okay, did we get the outcomes that we wanted from whatever it is that we were creating? And that's one way to really see if it is truly an equitable practice.
Have you ever worked with any leaders within organizations who, when they had to look at who's being left behind, that they didn't care as far as what groups were being left behind?
You know, they may not have cared, but they kind of were covert about it.
Hmm.
But like I said, it you find out in the outcomes.
Right.
So in their organizations, let's say you're doing an engagement survey or a culture survey, and most surveys, you can look at the data, by areas in the company. And so you can't hide from it. And,
Right.
and when you have the data, and I always try to go to leaders and managers with the data, because the data tells a story about what needs to be done and where the pain points are in the organization. And to complement the data and the story that the data tells us, I like to do some storytelling as well and
Mhm.
get real live, either through focus groups or interviews or such as the like to really augment what the data is telling you by having real life examples. And so when I come with that sort of um, agenda, they can't help but realize that, okay, I got to fix this.
Hmm.
Because then that's where the accountability comes in. Because the next time that, let's say a year later, if we take the survey again and we're seeing the same results, well, that leader of that person needs to say, okay, we didn't see any change. You didn't close the gap. We didn't see any changes in your scores. So I'm a proponent of having the data to tell the story, augmenting it with real life stories, and then going to the individual, because you can't really argue with that.
Right. In all across the world, I don't care what workplace you're in, and I'm in education, and the data talks. You can't
Hmm.
get around data. So, so that's definitely some pivotal information in as to how to look at when you're talking to leaders, and if you have those that say, I covertly they may say, I don't care
Yeah,
that certain groups are being left behind. The data is going to tell it. Data's going to show that this is what's going on, and you might want to take a look at it. So let's talk about your book. So in your book, The Truth About Equity, what it really is, what it isn't, and why everyone wins when we get it right. What truth did you most want readers to understand?
oh gosh, I think one of the things, I call them the myths about equity, that if you try to have equitable practices in an organization, that you're lowering the performance standard. And for example, in I've been in lots of discussions where the recruiter is looking for candidates for a hiring manager and an opening that they have, and the recruiter will usually say something like, well, I'm going to make sure that I get you a diverse slate of candidates as well. And
Hmm.
then the manager might say, well, I want to make sure that they're qualified and it's quality candidates. And
Hmm.
I always stop the conversation to say, well, what did you mean by that statement? And usually I'll get this him and hawing and all of this. And that's a myth. Because what they're saying is that if you try to bring in candidates who don't look like me, the
Right.
manager, then you're lowering the standard and they're not going to be as qualified and have the skills and capabilities. And what I like to say is, that you need to trust your staffing consultant and your recruiter, because they have the job requisition. They know the skills that are required, the capabilities, they know the years of experience, they know the characteristics, they know what you're looking for. And
Mhm.
by the way, all of those things can be embodied in a variety of different identities. So let them go do their job and bring you qualified candidates regardless of what they look like.
So, and I hear that often in conversations with other leaders in school districts and different systems, and sometimes, even those that look like us, and having those same conversations. Well, we want to make sure these are quality candidates. So, what does a quality candidate look like? And
That's it. That's it. And that's what I ask them.
exactly. You should be analyzing them based on their work and what you see on that resume or that essay that they're having to write, or having those recommendations from their supervisors. So it would be a beautiful world if we would stop saying that quality candidates look like something different
Hmm.
than how we look. So
Yeah. Yes,
we
absolutely.
love those conversations, and love that that's the truth that you want readers to get from your book.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about Destination STEM Incorporated. So that you co-founded that with your children, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So what inspired that mission?
Well, Destination STEM is a nonprofit that I founded with my daughter Christina and my son Stephen 5 years ago. And it's a nonprofit to get students of color and students in need interested in the STEM fields. And what inspired it, working almost 3 decades in a pharmaceutical company, and I saw healthcare, I saw a lot of people in STEM, and the representation of people of color was not really what it should have been and what it could been. And then from my children's viewpoint, they were looking at their teachers, both in high school and then also in even in college, and saying, wow, how come I don't have professors and teachers of color in these science and technology and engineering and mathematics fields? And so we said, you know what? We need to try to do something about that. And so that's when we founded Destination STEM Inc. And really just, we work with students in middle school and high school. We give out scholarships to high school students that are going to pursue, high school seniors that are going to pursue STEM degrees. We work with college students. We're a volunteer organization, and we have a virtual mentoring and tutoring program that college students participate in to mentor and tutor high school students and middle school students that may be struggling with their STEM courses, or just maybe struggling at, just in daily life.
Mhm.
And, there are lots of other workshops, and we go into schools and conduct workshops. And it's just, it's so fulfilling, and it's just so wonderful to be able to see students and the light bulb going off, and they see the possibilities because, we provide a leaders speaker series where they can see professionals of color in those STEM fields. And we talk to them about their journey and everything.
Mhm.
We also we use our scholarship recipients, and we have a panel, and we get them to talk about like all of the ups and downs of making that college decision, going beyond what your guidance counselor would tell you, but they're emotional, and how they chose their degree and where they were going to go, and what were some of the factors that they were looking at. And then we just like to prepare. We like to also go into the schools in their career fairs and their career expos and talk to the kids. And it's just wonderful. And to get them really interested so they can see the possibilities, see professionals who look like them in STEM, and see college students who look like them that are in these degrees and these minors and majors.
And it's very important for our Black and Brown students to see those who look like them and look like us. And I can remember going to school, and I could count on one hand the number of teachers who look like me even in college. And so, it mattered to see more, and not to take away from the impact of those who were not Black or brown, because they were definitely impactful in my life. But
Yeah.
it made a difference to be able to see others who they look like us, and they could identify with some of our habits and customs, and just be able to relate to us. So
Yes.
it's definitely important. So I got to applaud you and your children for having this nonprofit, because I know that you are definitely making a difference across the United States, and I dare to say maybe even globally, right?
Thank you. Yes, because a lot of most of our programs are virtual on our virtual learning center on our site and on our YouTube channel. And, sometimes they need encouragement
Yes.
because they're told by either a teacher or a guidance counselor, or sometimes even a family member of, well, you ain't good in math, or you're not good in science, and you're not this and you're not that. And we need to encourage them to say, yes, you can. You can be good in math. You can be good in science. And and then also make sure that as parents that we're paying attention to
Yes.
what these teachers and the guidance counselors are telling our kids. I laughed when my kids are in high school. After my son is my youngest, when he graduated in high school, he graduated in 2021,
Mhm.
and the guidance counselor retired after that. And I laughed because I was looking for her that next year. I forgot what it was. We were trying to make sure that the school knew about our scholarships
Hmm.
And so I was looking her up and trying to call her, and it was coming back, the email, it says when the email when you're not there anymore.
Hmm.
And so I got in my car and I drove to the school, and I said, where's Miss So and so? And they said, well, she retired. And I sat there and thought to myself, Lord have mercy, I was in that woman's office so much about Christina and Stephen that she retired after Stephen left. But she was a great guidance counselor. She was somebody who she was a partner to me and my husband to really make sure that they were both student athletes. But so making sure that they were taking the right courses to prepare for college, that as we got closer, each year we were looking at the courses that they were taking. And every
Hmm.
once in a while, my son might try to sneak something in or sneak something off. And we're like, no, 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 no.
Hmm.
You need to take this course and that course, but because he knew, he wasn't going to get away with anything, and
Right,
just to make sure that they were prepared to go into the rigor of academics in the college environment.
right. And those conversations are very important. So parents, I know I have parents that are listeners as well. We've had conversations over the past few months about how important your role is in making sure that just because your babies they go from elementary to middle to high, they still need you and they still need to hear from you and you need to be a part of those conversations. Our school counselors do so much and beyond meeting with students and helping them with their college or their careers and what they're wanting to do after high school. That testing, that dreaded word testing gets involved, and sometimes they are not able to make as many connections with students as they want. But school counselors, I have my hat off to them. Some of my best friends are school counselors. And so I definitely applaud the work that they do in speaking into the life of our students.
Absolutely, there's not enough of them in the schools.
And just had that conversation with another guest a few weeks ago. There really, truly are not enough, and they really don't have the more time to work. It's like their contracts end, and when their contracts end, there's so much more that needs to be done over the summer. But we find where principals are having to bargain and use their budget in order to add on days so that they can do more and further the work. But that's a whole nother episode. I'll probably have a roundtable discussion with some school counselors. As I said, I have most of my close friends are school counselors, and I've had one on the show this year.
That's a great subject.
Oh yes. So as someone who's deeply invested in leadership and education, what gives you hope about the future?
When I talk to college students, when I talk to high school students, and I see the the hope, I see they're so much more mature than when I was in high school, or when every generation, they seem to be mature. They seem to be know what's going on. They seem to have a bigger connection with the outside world and with the globe because of technology, social media, and they have opinions,
Hmm.
and they're not waiting until they're in their 30s or 40s or whatever to be leaders. They're stepping up and they're doing it now because they have beliefs and ideals and perspectives that I certainly didn't have when I was their age. And so I am so very, very I'm just excited about their futures, and they're going to be some tremendous leaders. And all we got to do is just get them prepared and let them loose.
Preparation,
Yes.
definitely. So how do you protect your peace and maintain balance while you're leading meaningful work as you do and all the things that you're doing? How do you maintain your peace and maintain balance?
Well, the first thing I do when I get up each morning, before I even get up, is a prayer meditation. Just that keeps me grounded for whatever may be coming my way through the day. And then the second thing is family. My kids, they are both now in Philadelphia. Stephen is in grad school at St. Joe's, and Christina's in vet school at Penn. And so they actually room together now. And, they're about 45 minutes away. So every once in a while we get to hang out with them and go to dinner or something, or we work together with Destination STEM and attend different events. Um, so my family keeps me grounded and strong, and then I love to just roll up with a big blanket and watch TV. I
Yeah.
love murder mysteries, and I love reading mysteries as well. So that's sort of my thing. And even when I'm on the treadmill walking, or the elliptical, I have my mystery that I'm reading or listening to. So that's what kind of sort of just diffuses me and helps me.
Those are some great ways to just have your peace and to get back into balance. Those are definitely some good ways. Now you can keep the elliptical because I cannot stand that machine. I will do treadmill. I will do the recumbent bike. I will do anything else but that elliptical. I'll leave it alone. But I'm glad it works for you.
Yeah.
So this is our last question, and then you're going to have an opportunity to share what you would like the audience to know, what you're working on, and to just talk about some of the things that you have done. And again, we want to restate your book and let others know about it. But what is the biggest message that you hope listeners take away from this conversation today?
I would hope that everyone understands that we all have a role to play in being what I call diversity and inclusion ambassadors. And then also, we have a role to play to creating a fair and equitable environment wherever we work, wherever we play throughout society. We each have a role in creating that culture that we want to see. And it's not somebody else's job solely, but we have to also say, I'm responsible for helping to contribute to the culture that I'd like to see. That's what I'd like for people to understand.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. So Celeste, share with our listeners how they can find you and what you're working on that you may be excited about right now.
Yeah, so you can find me at www.crwdiversity.com. And on the website, it has information. You can subscribe to our newsletter, and I promise you, it's not every month and every week. It's just every 3 or 4 months, so it's not a lot. Just to say what's going on, what we're doing. And one of the things that both of my books are there as well that you can purchase, click to purchase. And then also, I just released, it's a set of mini modules, training modules, virtual modules. They're each about 15 minutes long, and it's called Equity in Action Model for Managers. And they're not real expensive. And just go online, and it helps you to really take equity from intention to action. And so I just launched that towards it was this year. And so I'm really, really happy about that, to get that out so people can participate in it. They can go and take the module. And I'd really like to just get some feedback as well on what they think about it. So please, please go to the website, crwdiversity.com, and really take a look at it, engage with it, send me an email and say, I want to be a part of your family, Celeste, and I will send you information. And then also places where I'm going to be where I'll be speaking. um, we just got back from DC. My son and I, Destination STEM, participated in the HBCU Career Fair and Conference in DC. And I opened up the day with a keynote, and we had a ball talking to all of those bright, bright minds that we saw there at the conference, alumni and also students. So, we're just really, really happy. Oh, and the Destination STEM website is Very easy, destinationstem.org. Go there and you can take a look at what we do. We have an annual fundraiser coming up in June. And if you're not in the Pennsylvania area, you can please donate. We need the funding for our scholarships. And we plan on doubling the amount of scholarships that we gave out from what we gave out last year. And we're really, really happy about that. We have a virtual learning center. So you can go in there, and I encourage you to go on our learning center, get your kids to go on it. We have workshops, we have virtual college tours, and then we have understanding different careers as well. So please, please go on the website and engage with us again. We'll get on our mailing list. We do a newsletter for Destination STEM 2 3 times a year, and to say kind of what we're doing. And also we spotlight one of our scholarship recipients too in each of the newsletters.
Very good. Nice. So a lot of things that you have going on, and I will plug all of the links that you have shared with me, Celeste. I will plug that into the podcast episode itself, and you the listeners, they will also have a chance to see this on all of my social media platforms. I will make sure to put those out there as well. So thank you so much, Celeste, for being a part of this conversation today. Again, I knew it was going to be an awesome conversation just from talking with you beforehand and just getting to know you a little bit. So this has definitely been insightful, and I'm going to say I want to invite you back on for another day, and we can talk about that later on. So if you
Absolutely.
great. I love it. So these are definitely great conversations to have with business leaders, with educators, with those who are trying to make a difference in the workplace and in our schools and school systems. So again, thank you so much, Celeste, and being a part of this conversation.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, ma'am. Today's conversation reminds us that equity is not about checking boxes. It's about creating systems where every person has a real opportunity to thrive. I want to thank you again, Celeste, for challenging us to think deeper, to lead better, and to build environments where inclusion becomes a lived reality rather than just a corporate phrase. Thank you again, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.